Prosecuting Authority is prioritizing 9 high-level corruption cases, which will be ready for court within the next 6 months. National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batoi, says the investigating directorate has identified those cases. Batoi, addressing members of Parliament's Justice Committee, says these cases speak to the heart of state capture.
Batoi told MPs the National Prosecuting Authority has faced a lot of scrutiny and criticism about its ability and capacity to prosecute. With state capture for long being at the center of the South African narrative, the NPA has been under pressure to secure convictions. But Batoi says the NPA will remain independent and follow its own processes.
Whether a name is mentioned or not mentioned in the Zondo Commission report will not be whether the NPA prosecutes or decides not to prosecute. We follow our own processes and we will follow the evidence at the end of the day in our decisions to prosecute or not to prosecute.
Batoi says she is aware high-impact prosecutions do improve investor confidence and that her team has ongoing engagements with the Zondo Commission. But she warns that corruption cases on the court roll could decrease, reminding lawmakers that prosecutions cannot just focus on being a numbers game.
It's possible that our numbers of cases prosecuted in corruption matters could come down as we focus on the more complex, on the more high-profile matters. So I think we must be careful that we don't get into the numbers chasing, which was the case in the past, where all of the simpler matters were put onto the roll to ensure that we met these targets, but at the end of the day, the real cases were not being, in inverted commas, targeted.
A lot of focus will be placed on the successes of the investigating directorate and its new head, Advocate Andrea Johnson.
We have undertaken, Chair, seminal cases, and we are very aware that this must not only make an impact, but this will go a long way to kickstart our drive to restore faith and credibility in the NPA. Finally, there is a renewed energy, understanding and appreciation, Chair, in the ID of what our mandate is, why delivery is non-negotiable.
The NPA gave a breakdown of its conviction rate, which now stands at 75%. It says while COVID-19 did have a negative impact and caused many backlogs at courts, things are slowly starting to normalize. The authority says despite the negative image and public perception, it puts the improved conviction rate down to the hard work of its advocates. Batoi also dismissed claims that the authority bases its prosecutions on skin color, again saying cases are evidence-based and that prosecutions target criminals across the color bar. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
The director of Dubazana Attorneys, Tabi Singh Dubazana. Good evening to both of you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Well, Tabi Singh, a month ago or so, the National Director of Public Prosecution said pretty much what she said today.
She is tasked with a very difficult job, unfortunately. She's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Having a background, I don't come from NPA, but I worked very closely with the NPA in the department I was in a few years ago. The kind of backlog that they have, the kind of work that they have to deal with, and the kind of investigations that they have to deal with is quite a lot. And having 900 plus cases in terms of corruption that they need to deal with, it is a daunting task. And having said that, from what I just saw in the clip that you played, she said that the number may decrease depending on how the investigations go. And I think I understand why she would say that, because there's some that are will be deemed as if they're not as serious as the others, that demand more public attention than the others, that will make them choose whether or not to place them on the court roll or not for prosecution. I understand where she comes from with that, but having said that, you still wonder if letting the small fish go would be a good idea in order for us to catch the big fish, the way that it seems that she wants to conduct the prosecution at this stage of corruption cases.
She did also also say, or should I say, underscore the fact that capacity is still key?
Yeah, and just to go back to what you said a month ago, she said exactly the same thing, and earlier in the year, again in Parliament. And we all know that the NPA was not spared, the negative ramifications from the Zuma years. Capacity was hollowed out, morale was at record lows. There was, about a 25% vacancy rate in key areas. Senior prosecutors had left. So it has been a hollow shell, and Advocate Batoi has, over the past 3 years, worked hard to at least get some of those more simpler aspects of getting a functioning organization going. I think what was really encouraging today was to hear that, the NPA has decided or has earmarked that it requires between 750 million to $1 billion to implement this program over the next year or so, which would involve even bringing in capacity from private advocates and private attorneys to assist them with these complex prosecutions. So I think for me that was really, really important to hear, because we know what the state of the NPA is, and without a plan to capacitate in important areas, this plan would have fallen flat. And to know that they've at least put a number of what they need to ensure that there's success in these cases was at least encouraging to hear.
According to Shamila Batoi and Tabi Singh, and I quote, "This is our razor-sharp focus. Primarily, it is on the ID, and the head of the ID, Andrea Johnson, was there, and she was the one who told the Justice Committee that we are now, quote, poised for action." So she seems confident that she is not only up to the job, but she's going to deliver on the promise that they once again made before Parliament today.
We hope it's not empty promises. But like Ritumisi just said right now, the fact that they are going to employ or put into their confidence rather private advocates and private attorneys to assist, because the NPA situation is in a dire state. I mean, if you go to court on a daily basis, the prosecutors are inundated with so many cases, and on a daily basis there are new matters that they have to decide whether or not they're going to do the court roll or not. And then we still have a backlog of old matters that are not yet finalized. We have part-heard matters. It's a whole mess. So the prosecutor that is in the court is dealing with so much that if they don't get help to deal with these new 900 so cases that are now going to be on the court roll, they might in fact fall flat on their face. So I hope that they are prepared to deliver this time on what they have just put forth before Parliament.
Can you sort of perhaps share with us your understanding, of what Advocate Johnson said, and I quote, "Were seminal cases that will talk to the heart of state capture." In other words, without having heard anyone, telling you what those are, what did those words sort of tell you?
I think those are very strong words, and I think if we look at, for instance, the latest state capture report, right, we are then expecting cases relating to asbestos matters in the Free State, which some are already ongoing. The housing debacle in the Free State as well, which implicated Museveni Zwane. I think we're going to see some prosecutions relating to ESCOM and Transnet in particular. I think Justice Zondo was very clear and scathing as to the role of some individuals there, including, Machela Koko, Anoj Singh, Reginald, etc. And then if we just roll back, to Dumieni, we're already starting to see some prosecution relating to, for instance, contempt of court, etc., which I think is actually a good strategy. I think, the ID and the NPA, if they book in these big matters together with some of the smaller ones, because, if someone did issue a fraudulent document to obtain an asbestos tender, easier matters, while we do go then for these seminal matters which the ID is targeting, which, certainly I'm looking forward to, given the state of that state capture report and what it points to, what happened in our country in recent years.
Obviously, those implicated are not going to take this lying low. They're going to push back. They're going to use every avenue. They are going to, spend every cent, that they lay their hands on to make sure that the work of the NPA is extremely difficult, if not impossible. And among the criticisms that have been leveled at the NPA in Tabiseng is that they have often rushed to, the courts, but without enough to work on. As a result, many cases would collapse, or there would be these numerous delays for which they have also been criticized.
Yes, so what happens usually in court, once the investigations are finalized and the state then informs the court and the defense attorney that, all right, investigations are done, then they hand over the case docket to the defense attorney, and then we go through it meticulously, because remember, our job is to make sure that we defend our client to the best of our ability. And if we find technicalities, for example, broken chain of evidence and all of those things, that those technicalities that then end up making us make things that we call representations to have the charges withdrawn because they don't have sufficient merit to continue with the matter, those add to the delays. I think that's why Mr. Toy, when she spoke earlier in the clip that she played, she's like, can it not be a numbers game? Can we be focused on actually getting the job done? She said that in the past, they used to focus a lot on the small cases in order to get the ball going, and then as a result, the cases that needed priority from the NPA were not successful as a result. So I think they're trying to be as meticulous, they're hopefully at least trying to be as meticulous as they possibly can to make sure that the investigations are properly done, that they follow the letter of the law. And remember, because they're getting information from the State Capture Committee, the act, the State Capture Act states that, when it was amended by the Ramaphosa recently, you cannot use evidence that is self-incriminating that was said within the hearing against these people that have now been implicated. So now they have to do their own investigations over and above what is being given to them, and make sure that it is so concrete enough that there's a prima facie case against the accused persons. And even if we do get case dockets, well, not me specifically, but the defense attorneys then get the docket, there is not sufficient grounds for them to try and delay the matter because they need more information for this, more disclosure of this and that, or making representations for the matter to be provisionally withdrawn until the state has its house in order, stuff like that. So we hope that they will try and make sure that this time things are done properly and thoroughly.
And of course, Ritumetsi, not forgetting the fact that they still depend a lot on what your other law enforcement agencies like your Hawks, have to do first before the NPA can actually go to court.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think the criminal justice system as a whole is just sitting in a bit of a tenuous space, right? Because when we do speak about these conviction rates, for instance, that supposedly went down because of COVID, it's not painting the full picture. Just to tack on to what Tabiseng was speaking about earlier, almost half of the cases that go through, for instance, the South African Police Service get removed in court for a number of reasons, right? The investigations were not done well, and those that go through, there's an over-reliance on guilty pleas, it's minor matters, etc. So when we actually look at the full picture, if you look at, for instance, also the referrals from the SIU onto the NPA, we're not having enough of a throughput. So I'm concerned, for instance, if Shamila Batoyi is saying we're going to have less cases through the system, because it'll make the conviction rate seem higher, but in reality, what it will mean on the ground is that we're actually losing the war against crime, because it matters how many people feel like they will actually get caught when a crime has been committed. So the system as a whole, right, and even the criminal court, I think, needs to be a little bit more efficient. I saw a report that it sits on average between 4 and 5 hours a day, which obviously we need quite an increased effort with the number of cases coming on, with the complexity. So I think the criminal justice system as a whole and the various role players really need to dig in to ensure that we do a lot better on the score.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. Special thanks to both of you, Ritumetse Phiri and Ntabiseng Tubazana, our guests for this evening. To this now, with each provincial conference that passes, the closer Cyril Ramaphosa seems to be moving to being re-elected ANC president at the party's 55th National Elective Conference this coming December. Well, that's if, though. The pronouncements of ANC provincial chairpersons elected so far is anything to go by.